Greetings once again to you, the lovely GIC viewers and listeners within and beyond the borders of the Republic of Namibia. A very warm welcome back to the Government Information Center, this time around for an OMAS, which means Offices, Ministries and Agencies Information Sharing Session. As always, we are coming to you live and direct from the Government Information Center here in the heart of the nation's capital, Windhoek. For this episode, I will be your host. My name is Hileni Felepa-Samunyela, and I am joined in the studio by my guest, Mr. Kolga Sikopo. He is a Deputy Executive Director in the Department of Natural Resources Management under the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, and he's here to help us unpack the National Conference on Community-Based Natural Resources Management Conference that is going to be taking place between the 25th and the 26th of March 2026 at the Country Club Resort and Casino, right? But before I can officially welcome my guest to the Government Information Center, I'd like to pause here and just extend a warm invitation to you, Namibia, to be part of this conversation by following this discussion on our social media platforms, where we are currently streaming this show live. On Facebook, we are at the Government Information Center, the GIC, or alternatively, you can stream us live on our YouTube channel. Our handle there is the Government Information Center, GIC Namibia. Be part of this conversation. Now, Mr. Sikopo. Yes. Good morning or good afternoon, DED. It's past 12. Good afternoon, DED. Welcome to the Government Information Center.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on behalf of the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism.
Right. Now, just to create context, as I've alluded to in my introductory remarks, we are unpacking the National Conference on Community-Based Natural Resources Management that is going to take place from the 25th to the 26th of March 2026. And I know that the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism, together with the stakeholders or partners, is set to host this conference this month. Briefly talk to us about the dates, as well as the objectives of this conference and how it will contribute to national conservation efforts.
Thank you very much. The conference is a national conference on community-based natural resource management, which will be held on the 25th and the 26th of March this year, in 2 weeks or so. Mm-hmm. But before I come to the objectives, just to give a context of the Cbnrm, what in short, Cbnrm, which stands for Community-Based Natural Resource Management. Mm-hmm. At independence, government had consultations with the communities after new government realizing that communities had to be involved in the management of natural resources, and here we're speaking about wildlife. Mm-hmm. And forests, of course. Mm-hmm. Because there were no such benefits. Mm-hmm. The only benefits were limited to commercial game farms. Mm-hmm. And therefore there was a need to find ways on how communities can participate in natural resources management, but also benefit from these resources. Mm-hmm. So consultations then started working with partners in Cbnrm, mm-hmm. Civil society or specific NGOs that were there mm-hmm. at that time and are still there even now. Mm-hmm. And 5-6 years later, in 1996 to be specific, mm-hmm. A legislation was passed, which is an amendment to the Nature Conservation Ordinance, mm-hmm. An ordinance of 1975. So that amendment then allowed for establishment of conservancies. Then a few years later, I think in 2001, mm-hmm. a similar approach to forest resources. Right. A legislation was passed. Mm-hmm. And this was really to bring communities to participate in wildlife conservation, in forest management, mm-hmm. and also benefits from these resources. Right. So it's now 30 years since the conservancy legislation was passed. Right. And we have seen the benefits that are accrued or going to communities. Mm-hmm. but we have also seen challenges. It's now 25 years or so since the Forest Act was passed. Again, we have seen the benefits, or we have continued to see the benefits, and there are also challenges.
Right.
And at that time, it's 6 years after independence, is about finding ways on how communities must participate in natural resource management. But as we go, you find this is about business. This is about, there's that element of conserving, but also finding a way for poverty alleviation or eradication in these communities, and if you do, and it grew. I mean, conservancies at that time, first conservancies in 1998, 4 conservancies established. Now we are speaking about 87 conservancies, with 4 community associations. We are speaking about 48 community forests.
Oh, wow.
So this is not what has been expected, but it grew, and it's quite interesting, very. And therefore, the governance also becomes an issue. And so with all these challenges that we have seen, but also opportunities that exist or are there, we needed, as government working with partners, need to find ways on how we can address these issues.
All right.
So we had a technical workshop last year, just to look at technically on all these issues, which has now been elevated to a national conference.
Right.
So the purpose or objective of the conference really is to bring offices, ministries, and agencies that are involved in this sector, but also the communities themselves,
right,
from community forests, from conservancies, traditional authorities, and the NGO partners, private sector. Let's get in that room, discuss on these issues.
Right.
And the conference will have 4 main sessions. The first session will be to look at the overall overview of the Cbnrm sector,
right,
in terms of conservancies, community forests, and the community associations that are involved in natural resource management.
Okay.
So that session will be on the first day. We'll look at where are we coming from? I say this 30 years since
right,
the passing of the Nature Conservation Amendment Act. It's 25 years since the passing of the Forest Act.
Indeed.
That allows for community forests. So we need to interrogate what has happened from the beginning
to the present,
to the
and
current.
Of course the future.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
But that session will also look at how what is the role of community structures
right,
in the governance, in the management of these established institutions, starting from the community or conservancy committees or community forest committees. What is their role and what is the performance over these years? Is there anything that we need to change, or is there anything that we need to improve in terms of their roles? But also, not only at the community or conservancy committee level, we also need to look at their regional structures or regional associations, their national associations. Even lower than the conservancy committees, we have community game guards, resource monitors, and therefore we need to look at their performance, also in relation to existing legislation, so that if there's a need to review the regulations that speaks to their performance, let that be done, and the conference therefore will look at that.
Right.
The second session of the conference,
which is on the second day, no?
Still on the first day.
Still on the first day.
Still on the first day.
Okay.
We will look at the natural resource utilization.
Okay.
Before that will be on the second day.
Okay.
The second session will actually look at the main one, which is governance.
Right.
Governance and financial management. Because this is a program that generates quite some income. Conservancies, for example, last year generated 109 million Namibian dollars.
Oh, wow.
Those 87 conservancies, one is new, was just recently registered.
Okay.
So that's quite a lot of money that can play a role in improving the livelihood of these communities.
Absolutely.
And therefore, it's important for us to see and ensure that that 109 million is put to good use.
Absolutely.
But we see, I just mentioned, we see some gaps in some of the conservancies, not all of them, all community forests. And therefore, we need to find a uniform way of assisting them in managing, in making sure that that $900 million actually plays a role in the livelihood, in the economic development of the country.
Right.
And with the gaps that we've been seeing in the past 30 years, with the challenges that we've been seeing, we need to look at those governance issues. We need to look at the financial management issues in these conservancies, in the community forests, community associations. So that will look, and it will also focus on just right from the declaration of these institutions. Is it being done and done properly?
Right.
It will look at what are the powers of the minister who establishes these institutions? Is all what is required provided for?
Right.
It will look at, that session will also look at the powers of the conservancies, the powers of the community forests, because these are institutions, these are legal bodies, and therefore they must have that voice, and to have that voice, they must be backed by legislation.
Right.
So we will look at that.
Okay.
We will also look at the benefit sharing mechanism, because if we are talking about generating 109 million Namibian dollars, it's quite a lot of money.
It is a lot
and
of
therefore, is this money getting into the beneficiaries who are the members of these conservancies? We'll even go further. What we have also noticed as a gap in conservancies is the procurement of goods and services at a community level, which may not be in the current legislation. So we will look at that at the conference and assist these communities in coming with some specific guidelines which they can follow when they procure goods and services.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Scopo. Quite a mouthful, but a lot to digest. Now, one key aspect from your response there is governance, right?
Yes.
How can then conservancies and community forests improve governance, share more benefits, reduce poverty, while promoting suitable, sustainable, forestry products, nature resources utilization, and tourism development at the community level?
Yes, the improvement in governance is for them to have well-established structures. That's why we need to look at these roles on the structures. Balanced structures, the youth included, women included. So this is very important for us in terms of governance.
Okay.
But governance is also keeping to their policies, keeping to their guidelines. This is quite important, because once you have a good governance system or arrangement, then we will ensure that, or they will ensure that the natural resources are protected,
Right.
Natural resources are utilized and utilized properly, because the conference will also look at the utilization of natural resources from hunting, from tourism, concessions in national parks, which they have rights over, look at joint venture establishment in conservancies. So that governance structure is important for these communities, that they have systems, they have structures in place, and they can manage their resources properly. And that 9 million, if you get that 9 million, because they must then have a benefit distribution plan, they must have constitutions that speaks to how they utilize the resources or the benefits that they get from the natural resources. So it all drives around good governance, accountability, and this is what we want to bring at the conference, that they keep to these systems that have been established, and the systems then speaks to the proper effective and efficient way of looking after these natural resources. And in return, these natural resources should bring more of the $109 million.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Scopo. And now I'm shifting gears to conservation being a collaborative process and efforts, right? Talk to us about some of the stakeholders that will be partaking or converging for this conference come the 25th and the 26th of March 2026.
Yes, very, very important because community-based natural resource management is not a responsibility of the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism alone, or government alone. This is a stakeholder, this is a partnership, it's a collaborative partnership between government, the communities themselves, the NGO, civil society, that we work together. And we have seen great success story of this program because of that partnership.
Right.
And we need to continue to partner and work with communities with one goal, that we assist communities to manage their own natural resources that they live with.
For their own good.
For their own good, for their own benefits, because it's not easy to live with an elephant.
Or
lions. You suffer losses. You suffer losses every day. And therefore, we need to find a balanced way on how you can live with elephants and lions. And the only way is for communities to see a value from living with these animals. And they are seeing that value, because we have seen communities that say, don't shoot that elephant, because that's where we get our income from.
Right.
Don't shoot that lion. But we have also seen elephants causing damages to crops.
Absolutely.
We have seen lions killing goats, cattle, and all that.
Yes.
And these communities depend on these livestock.
Yes.
And therefore, we need to find that balance and ensure that the coexistence is there and that there's value in living with wild animals.
Right. Now, Mr. Sikopo, earlier on, you've mentioned about some of the challenges that were encountered through this whole process, because we said it started around 1990. That's when some of these conservancies were proclaimed. Talk to us about some of these challenges that you've encountered.
Yes, the challenges are there, and they differ from administrative challenges, but also from natural resource management or natural resources challenges. Administratively, we see, and it's not all conservancies or all community forests, some of them, but it's a general problem. We see poor governance in the management of funds. That is a big challenge, and it's actually driving this meeting or this conference, that we find ways on how we can manage.
Right.
I mean, I'm giving the example of the $109 million.
Absolutely.
But we ask ourselves questions, how much of the $109 million has gone to the communities and make that impact in the livelihood? At the moment, we can confirm about 20 million that has gone into projects.
Right.
Of course, they pay salaries and all that. But that financial management is not in good shape. And we need to find a way as government, as Cbnrm partners, NGOs, and communities themselves to work together and find systems.
Right.
And this is one of the objectives of the conference. And that has been a big challenge.
Right.
But from a natural resource management, we have challenges such as poaching.
Right.
The illegal killing of wildlife. And if you look at, if we can give an example of elephants again, there are more elephants outside national parks
than they are
in the parks. And Namibia has about 25,000 elephants. And therefore, there's a need for communities through these structures to have systems in place to manage their elephants and other species. So poaching has been an issue. But the biggest challenge when it comes to wildlife, natural resources, even maybe above poaching, is the issue of human-wildlife conflict.
Right.
Because of the 25,000 elephants, just close to 1,000 elephants in the country, a number of predators, crocodiles, and you mentioned them. So this is a challenge that the ministry is faced with, and other conservation bodies, that every day we have a number of reports and calls about this problem. And if you have 87 conservancies, almost the entire country have clusters or so of conservancies. And with conservancies, you have the community game guards, and you have the resource monitors. And therefore, we need to bring in these community structures to address that problem.
Right.
So that we assist the farmers, we assist individual members of these conservancies to address these issues. So these are some of the challenges that the conference will look at administratively, but also challenges that are related to natural resource management.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sikopo. Now, Namibia, if you are just tuning in, you are tuned into an information sharing session, this time around under the flagship of the OMAS, which means Offices, Ministries and Agencies Information Sharing Session. I am your host for this specific one. My name is Heleni Felepe-Samunyela, and I am joined in the studio by Mr. Kolga Sikopo. He is the Deputy Executive Director in the Ministry or in the Department of Natural Resources Management and under the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism. And we are here to dissect or unpack the National Conference on Community-Based Natural Resources Management that is going to be taking place between the 25th and the 26th of March 2026 at the Country Club. Now, you too can be part of this discussion by following this conversation on our social media platforms. We are currently streaming this show live. On Facebook, we are at the Government Information Center, the GIC, or alternatively, you can stream us live on our YouTube channel. Our handle there is the Government Information Center, the GIC Namibia. Be part of this conversation. Mr. Sikopo, as we draw near to our conversation, I'd like to find out from you, how has the Cbnrm program, as it's affectionately known, contributed to Namibia's global reputation in conservation and wildlife protection?
Very much. In fact, the Cbnrm program is an anchor to our conservation because it involves, as the name says, it involves the communities who live with these natural resources.
Right.
And therefore, it has significantly contributed to conservation in this country because communities themselves have taken ownership over wildlife, over natural resources, that they are able to put systems in place to protect the wildlife. We have communities neighboring our 20 national parks. Some of the national parks are not even fenced,
right.
And therefore animals move freely. And as they move out of the national parks, they get into the conservancies. And the conservancies, through the community-based natural resource management program, have taken ownership over this program, over the conservation of wildlife, and therefore we have been recognized internationally as a country in the conservation of wildlife, particularly at community level, and therefore we see an increase even at individual species because of the participation and the involvement of communities. Our elephants population were about 7,000 at Namibia's independence. The community-based program came in. Today we're talking about 25,000 elephants.
Right.
We have the highest population of black rhinos in the world.
Oh.
We have the highest population of cheetahs in the world.
Wow.
And we have many of the species that we can really proud of. And we attribute this to the involvement of communities.
Right.
We see poaching even more in the national parks than it is in the communities.
Right.
Because they have taken that ownership. They are the guards, and they drive benefits from these natural resources. And these conservancies, for example, even serve as buffer to the national parks.
Right.
So quite important, and they've played a significant role in the conservation program for the country.
Thank you, Didi. Now, of course, looking ahead, what are some of the expected tangible outcomes or resolutions that are expected or that may be an outcome for this conference that we anticipate?
Yeah, we expect some outcomes, again, based on the 4 areas of the Constitution, which basically on the overview addressing those challenges on issues of governance, on issues of natural resource utilization, natural resources protection. But the expectation really is to come up with specific guidelines on all these 4 areas of the conference. That will help us even to improve the regulations, governance, but also important to mention that we are now finalizing, or have finalized actually, we're just in the process of passing it as a law, the Wildlife and Protected Areas Management Bill.
Right.
That speaks to some of these issues. So it's the expectation that from this conference, we can get those specific guidelines that will feed into the regulations to the bill. Okay. But also on the forest side, the Forest Act is being amended, and there's, again, expectations that we can feed into the regulations when it comes to these 4 areas, that we can improve governance, we can improve natural resource protection, but more so create benefits for communities.
All right. Now, speaking of which, earlier on you've mentioned that, wildlife conservation. Conservation is not a one-man show.
Yes.
It cannot be left alone to the ministry alone, but it's a collaborative effort. So how can the private sector and development partners further support community-based conservation initiatives?
Very, very important. Again, yes, it's not a ministry's responsibility alone. The private sector and development partners play a critical role in conservation of natural resources, and in this case through community structures. For example, when it comes to tourism development in conservancies, we expect the involvement of the private sector to partner with the communities into establishment of lodges, establishment of campsites. We have hunting in trophy hunting or conservation hunting in these conservancies, and there is that partnership with the private sector that we can market the animals that the minister or the ministry allows to be on the quota, that private sector can market for visitors and tourists to these lodges or tourism establishment. So they play that critical role, but also private sector to inject that skills or those skills and that knowledge into the communities themselves, that at a certain time the communities themselves are in a position to run that lodge themselves. The communities themselves are in a position to manage that hunting safari themselves. So that is very important. Equally so to the development partners that have been very supportive. We have seen because it's a program that needs to be sustainable.
Right.
And therefore the development partner is important, that as much as the communities are generating income from hunting, from lodges or utilization of forest products, there's a need for that external support by the development partners to keep the program sustainable.
Right. Now, Mr. Sikopo, I want to thank you so much, but it will be amiss of me if I do not post you this last question. I'd like to find out from you what your final message is to my viewers and listeners, but to Namibia at large, as well as the stakeholders that are looking forward to converging for this very important conference.
Yes, just to say that this is a very important program for the livelihoods of the communities. It's a very important program for the conservation of natural resources, and therefore it's important that we get to this conference, get geared towards those specific objectives that will assist, or the outcomes of that, assisting the communities to manage their natural resources efficiently and effectively. But important that communities take ownership, communities take responsibility in that natural resource management. And we are looking forward to have everyone that will be joining us at the conference, that together we bring in those new ideas, we bring in those suggestions, proposals to help us get to the improvement of the program.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Sikopo, for joining us this morning to help us unpack what is expected, what is actually going to be taking place, this conference, the National Conference on Community-Based Natural Resources Management, Cbnrm, as it's affectionately known. And we look forward to this conference and its outcome. And we thank you and your ministry so much for the concerted efforts that goes in, in arranging and organizing events of such magnitude. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Namibia, as you have been tuned in, this has been an information sharing session under the flagship of the OMAS, Offices, Ministries and Agencies. And I was joined in the studio by Mr. Kolga Sikopo. He is the Deputy Executive Director in the Department of Natural Resources Management under the Ministry of Environment, Forestry and Tourism. We were unpacking the 2026 National Conference on Community-Based Natural Resources Management. I've been your host. My name is Helene Felapa-Samunyela. From me and the entire GIC production crew, until next time, take care.